Hi, my name is Nikki Gifford, and I'm going to be walking you through a review of Google Play Store privacy policies, challenges, and their effectiveness. First, starting with an overview, the mobile application market is set at a trajectory of 385% growth through 2021. What this means is that mobile applications are not going anywhere. They're actually going to increase exponentially over the next few years, which means that data privacy around mobile applications is going to become more and more important for software development and consumers of mobile application products. Today, young people spend more time on their mobile devices than they do watching television, and the average person looks at their phone more than 47 times per day. Today, Google Play has the most applications available at 2.8 million applications over any other application deployment platform. In 2017, over 700,000 applications were removed due to being deemed as potentially harmful. So from a consumer perspective, the importance of the ability to ensure that you have the appropriate policies in place for applications, how we monitor those policies, how we hold individuals and developers accountable for the inclusion of those policies is becoming more and more prevalent. Some of the software development challenges that we are seeing today is that when a developer is creating either a new application or they're making modifications to an existing application, they have to take many things into consideration from a policy perspective. All of our applications have regulatory requirements around them that dictate the amount of privacy that we have to maintain as developers. And what that means is that the challenges become ever more increased due to the changing regulations, to the way that we're handling data more and more from a digital perspective, the way that we're retaining data, the cost associated with redevelopment, and then also what we call as ubiquitous computing, which is anywhere, anytime, any location type software being made available to users and consumers. Some of the development challenges include things like personal information collection. Examples are business and personal use of data, loyalty and membership programs which retain data, location-based services that developers need to take into consideration as they're producing the mobile applications and coding, transmission and storage capabilities within the application, ongoing profiling services, meaning that applications that use ad-based services, how it's storing that data, how it's consuming it, and then the outputs that it gives. The access to the data from a third-party perspective, sharing, selling, we need to ensure that we're protecting our consumers against those. Transparency and informed consent. This means that there has to be transparency about the policies that are in place, as well as obtain consent when there are going to be violations of that policy, or if there are specific requirements to share data across multiple platforms or with other components, API calls, or other connectors into those applications. And then again, as I mentioned before, just the continued application development and ensuring that any changes that you make to an existing application are still going to adhere to the same policies. And then from a cost perspective, as both the consumer, the cost base increases, as well as from a developer perspective or a company or corporation who is paying to have these applications developed, the ever increasing cost of the application to maintain as well as create. Highlighting some of the policies that are in place today, there's a policy called the California Online Privacy Protection Act. It was put in place in 2003. It went into effect on July 1st, 2004. This act was the first in the United States that actually required commercial websites on the World Wide Web and online services to include a privacy policy on their website. California state law, under the Business Professional Code, Business 8 Special Business Regulations, indicate that operators of commercials website indicate that they collect anybody that collects personally identifiable information from California residents are required to post and comply with a privacy policy that meets specific requirements. Anybody who fails to abide by this policy, it has 30 days for remediation from notification, and then if they don't remediate it within that 30-day time frame, then they will be deemed in violation. The next policy, known as Gramm-Leach-Bailey Bliley Act, Privacy Consumer Financial Information. This one is surrounding financial data and how financial institutions utilize that data. This describes the financial institution's practice with respect to collecting and disclosing non-public personal information about a consumer to both affiliated as well as non-affiliated parties. This becomes important because we have more and more the banking industry, the financial industry as a whole, insurance industries who are also associated are continuing to share personal data across many of the mobile platforms. And therefore, consumers of those platforms need to know and understand what their policies are, as well as accept them prior to use. The next policy is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. This act was created to ensure that anybody under the age of 13 is protected from any kind of harmful information, explicit content, things of that nature. And what this does is it provides a safeguard for these individuals who are 13 and under for their parents to actually have control and mechanisms and approval before allowing kids to access those applications. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, this is around electronic data records, among other things. The reason this is important is because as we get into more and more mobile computing, you're starting to see areas where doctors' offices are giving you a mobile platform for consumers or patients to be able to log in and see lab results, to be able to get results or updates from their doctors directly, whether it's a personal note or information about their health. And therefore, we want to ensure that we have, from a protection perspective, that the data is not being stored, shared inappropriately, and without the consent of the consumer. And the most recent one that was that came up in 2016 was the General Data Protection Regulation, which is specific to the European Union. This regulation talks about maintaining data in keeping electronic data or personal data in Europe, not having it disclosed outside the boundaries of Europe. It also protects other members of the European Union. This is an example of some of the Google policies. On the Google website, there's actually a little snippet that says, when you use your services, you're trusting us with your information. We understand this is a big responsibility and work hard to protect your information to put you in control. So outside of the legal policies that I mentioned previously, these are some of the policies that Google checks against for any application that's put into Google Play. And this is everything from sexually explicit content, device network abuse. As an example, Google, when they check an application when it's new, or as they go through and they do random checks against applications, they will validate that the application is actually starting within the Google network. It's not being pulled from some other obscure location or potentially harmful location. Other things in here talk about they don't allow hate speech, sensitive events, emergency services, things like that. So they're very specific on the amount of content and information that's included in the applications, and do regular checks against that to ensure that they don't have applications that are in violation of what their policies dictate. One of the nice things that we have for software developers today is what we call privacy policy generators. What this does is Google today provides a very extensive handbook for any developer to gauge their policies against, to ensure that they're not going to be in violation. However, in some cases, especially newer developers, or if you have a developer who just wants to check whether or not they have the appropriate policies in place, or their policies are covering all of the aspects of Google, there are actually multiple policy generators that are out there on the market today. Some of them are free. Some of them you have to purchase a one-time license or a perpetual license. Other are subscription-based services where you may subscribe by monthly or yearly content. And there are also others that are per use, and they range, right? Sometimes they are, very low end quality. Some are higher end quality, just like most software or tools that are out there today. I'm going to show you next a little video on how to stay out of policy and privacy trouble.
Releasing your new app on Google Play means you're likely to have gone through many checks, like testing for quality and making sure bugs are fixed. It's also important to make sure you check your app for potential policy issues. Here are 10 ways to stay on the right side of Google Play policy. Review our Policy Center. The Developer Policy Center, found at play.google.com/policy, is your resource for everything related to Google Play policy. We've organized the policies into themes represented by tiles. You can select a specific policy to learn more about it and see visual examples of common violations. Describe your app appropriately. Taking the time to describe your app can save you from receiving a metadata policy violation. Read through your short and full descriptions and remove any excessive keyword lists, irrelevant information, or user testimonials. Your app description should be appropriate for all ages. Remember that every translation of your app description needs to be compliant with the metadata policy. Use images you have the rights to. If you want to stay on the right side of intellectual property policy, it's best to create your own images and videos to promote your app. Your app icon, feature graphic, and any other assets you upload to your store listing should only include images you have the right to use. If you've been granted permission to use assets owned by others, you can notify the app review team using this form. And just like your app description, the images and videos in your store listing should be appropriate for all ages. Rate your app accurately. Once you've completed the content rating questionnaire, you're almost ready to submit your app. It's important to provide accurate responses in order to receive an accurate rating, as apps that aren't rated correctly or aren't rated at all can be removed from the Play Store. Handle user data with care. Is your app collecting user data? User data can include information provided by users, or about their interactions with the app or device. If you're collecting user data, you need to include a privacy policy in your store listing and in your app. The privacy policy should let users know what data you're collecting and why you're collecting it. Read over the Personal and Sensitive Information section under our User Data Policy to see what types of data to pay special attention to. Make sure the ads in your app are policy compliant. When you submit your app for review, the Google Play team also reviews the content and behavior of the ads within your app. Make sure the ad content doesn't include adult images, violence, or anything else that would violate our content policy. Ad behavior should be straightforward. We don't allow ads that are disruptive or deceptive, including ads that pose as system notifications, ads that aren't dismissible, or ads that appear after a user closes the app. A policy issue with your ads can lead to an app rejection or suspension. Check with your ad provider to learn about filtering options. Don't forget the restricted content policy. Review your app and your store listing page for any restricted content, such as adult content, violence, or drugs. If you're concerned about any of your content, read through the restricted content policy for more details and examples. Any apps that contain or feature user-generated content must take additional precautions in order to provide a policy-compliant app experience. If this describes your app, check out the user-generated content policy to learn more. Update your email preferences. You're almost ready to submit. Just one final thing. Take a second to update your email address on the account details page in your developer console. If a policy issue does come up, we can contact you with the necessary steps to address it. Congratulations! Now it's time to push that shiny blue publish button. Fix any policy issues found in review. Even though you've checked your app against our policies, it's always possible that your app gets rejected or suspended after review. If your app or app update gets rejected, keep in mind that many violations can be fixed. Just follow the steps in the notification from Google Play email you received to address the issue and submit your app again. Reach out to us for support. If you disagree with a policy violation, or if you'd like help resolving your policy issue, you can contact our policy support team. Simply use the contact details in the notification email, or click on the question mark at the bottom of each page in the Policy Center. For the quickest response, make sure to include your package name. For more information on Google Play Policy, head over to the Developer Policy Center. If you want more tips on how to launch your app or game business, check out the other videos in this series and download the Playbook for Developers app on Google Play.
Now that we've had a video from Google, This is one of the tools that Google uses to ensure that any developers that are submitting applications have the ability to compare against Google policies and to assist them in trying to prevent them from being either rejected and or having to do rework. If, however, an application developer or software developer finds themselves in a situation where they have their application cannot be published, then these are the types of violation types that they have that Google has published. So one is a warning. They referenced in the video a little bit about the email warning that you'll get. It has links in it to go out and try to fix the application, identify the policies that are in violation and be able to fix them. One is a disabled ad serving. This is where an ad is serving. They'll disable the ad portion of it. One is section level enforcements, where they'll disable certain sections of the application. One is restricted in serving. One is disabled in serving. Page level enforcements, restricted ads, disabled. And then the final one is account level enforcements. What this means is when you get down to the account level enforcements, this means that you have been in violation multiple times. You have had a severe violation, or in some cases, you have just refused to remediate your application, and this is the last step for Google, is to basically disable your developer account. So Google does take this very seriously. There are tons of blogs out on the internet. There are a lot of different mechanisms and walkthroughs for how individuals can get their applications back published again, especially if it was an innocent mistake or a miss in their programming. However, Google is very strict on their policies and will not just grant access back. You do have to do the remediations that they request. The next question, how effective is Google policy review? 66% of an increase in harmful application suspensions occurred in 2018 over the year prior. Google checks developers and their accounts through automation as well as manual approaches. So they do cross-checking between developer accounts to ensure that the accounts, the developers that are producing the applications are not spoofing, that they're not repeat offenders. Unfortunately, a majority of the violators are repeat offenders. And then more than 80% of the severe policy violations are conducted by repeat offenders and abusive developer networks. So again, this goes back to Google being very strict on the type and amount of application monitoring that they're doing, both on newly submitted applications as well as software that's been modified. So in summary, the key message here is, one, in order to ensure that both our consumers stay protected for data privacy as well as to ensure that our developers have a reduced risk and cost associated with software development, taking out some of the challenges we mentioned before, we need to ensure that our developers know what the policies are, that they're utilizing the tools that are available in the market, that they're reviewing their code frequently, so doing the checks and balances against the Google policies. Google is also implementing additionally machine learning to better assist in both the identification of policy violators as well as providing some key metrics and measures to ensure that the software developers are enhancing their ability to do software development without policy violation. And then finally, there is still more research required to determine true effectiveness of the overall policy the policy generators that are out there, as well as the ability to catch policy violations in applications prior to being released to consumers. Thank you for your time.